MEDIAWATCH now, though. James is with us in the studio. Hi there, James. We're going to start with the Pope. He does have a tendency to get political sometimes. He's told us his thoughts about poverty, about greedy cardinals.
About
now
Cuba, Ukraine.
About Cuba, of course. He helped broker the détente between the United States and Cuba. Now, though, he is really getting to grips with climate change. This is one topic very close to his heart.
That's right. A green-wearing Pope is the headline for The Economist. And indeed, it's a very political issue and a very political Pope. And one man who has reacted very quickly to that is Jeb Bush, the US presidential contender, who told the Pope, with all due respect, I don't get economic policy from my bishops or my cardinals or my Pope. I think religion ought to be about making us better as people and less about things that end up getting into the political realm. And one headline there that I think sums that up in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. When a cool Pope hits a warm planet, I think they mean cool as in funky, it produces a storm. And I think it's just a coincidence that they have the weather update on the same page there. So certainly very political indeed, Laura.
And you mentioned Jeb Bush there because he says it's a political issue. The Pope says, no, it's not. It's a religious issue and I'm well within my rights to talk about it.
That's right. He's really approaching it from the moral standpoint. What's extraordinary here is he has been working on this really since the beginning of his papacy. Apparently, the Pontifical Council on Justice and Peace gave him a document, first delivered an effort on this in July 2014, at which point he took over authoring it. And indeed, it's called after a line from St. Francis of Assisi's writings, Praised Be. St. Francis, of course, was famously a lover of nature. He's seen as one of the saints who was most sort of associated with nature and ecology. I think he was even...
like the animals, didn't he?
That's right, indeed. And as Pope Francis indeed took the name Francis for that reason. So you'd almost think that this was all very clearly thought through from the very beginning of his papacy, that he was going to cast himself as a pope who was a lover of the poor and indeed
He's not just going to sit there and say prayers, is he? He wants to get involved with real life.
He really does want to get involved.
And some of the right-wing Republicans have had a real problem with him. He made some comments, didn't he, about capitalism and...
That's right.
It was unfair and creating inequality.
But as Bloomberg says, he doesn't have an environmental regulatory agency, but he does have a lot of moral pressure that he can apply. This is just 5 months ahead of that big climate summit in Paris.
Right, we might see him putting pressure on leaders ahead of that summit. Interesting.
That's right.
All right.
And just one final thought on that. A lot of people reacting to the whole notion of a moral approach to the environmental issue. And George Monbiot, writing in The Guardian, says, the Pope can see what many green atheists can't, who tend to cast this in economic terms. We will lose money if we don't protect the natural world. He said, no, it's about nature, it's about love. And from a very young age, children, nature appeals to our hearts before we even can think logically about the dangers of ignoring nature.
Well, everybody wants to preserve the planet, I would hope. It's just how we go about it, isn't it? But absolutely. There you go. Let's move on to another story. It's been a bad week for relations between France and Italy. First, of course, about the African migrants trying to get across the border at Ventimiglia. France saying no way, and Italy saying, look, you need to help us out a bit with this migrant crisis. Now, it's got a bit more sticky. It's about Nutella.
That's right, which in itself is sort of sticky, I suppose you could say. The French Environment Minister Ségolène Royal says it's destroying the environment. It uses palm oil. Now, the Italians...
Nutella is an Italian chocolate spread, for those who don't know, and
indeed.
It's popular in crepes.
That's right, and a big export for Italy. And she said, look, use of palm oil, it contributes to deforestation, it's destroying the environment, and you should stop eating it. Now, in the middle of this migrant row, it probably wasn't timed very well, although you could say...
Well, it's unusual for a minister to name an actual brand and say people shouldn't.
That's right, and to actually go so far as to say you should avoid it, and that was last night on primetime television when she started talking about that. Well, it gave way to an outpouring of criticism in Italian Twitter. This is the Environment Minister saying that this is disconcerting and that he'll be eating bread and Nutella for dinner this evening.
And no brie or camembert.
No, you have La Stampa featuring the wife of the Prime Minister, Agnese Renzi, who was posing with a big pot of Nutella. So a lot of economic patriotism indeed. And one person, oh God, there were all sorts of remarks saying...
It's a huge export for Italy, isn't it? It could be very damaging, and their economy's not doing great, so...
And some of the tweets were quite funny. This one saying, well, whatever about Nutella, you have disgusting pâté in France. Stick to that, and also give us back the Mona Lisa.
And what about the boycotts on foie gras in the United States? I mean...
That's right, it could get complicated. Another person person saying, "Oh, well, if this is Ségolène Royal's way of protecting the environment, what would you say? Boycott Nutella, but maintain nuclear energy."
Well, yes,
then
right, interesting.
perhaps not the most major.
She's starting small.
Environmental issue.
She'll be getting to the big stuff later, James.
Nutella first, next the world.
Absolutely, James. Thank you very much indeed, James Creedon there.